You never see betrayal coming from the people you spend 8, 9, 10 hours a day with. The ones who laugh at your jokes in the break room, who complain about the same meetings, the same deadlines, the same bad coffee. You start to believe that, maybe, in this cold, ruthless corporate world, you've carved out a corner of it where you belong. But the thing about wolves, they'll smile while they circle you. You were the quiet one, not shy, not invisible, just focused. You came in, did your work, did it well. Too well, apparently, because what you didn't realize, what no one tells you when you start climbing higher than they expected you to, is that success is a spotlight and it makes the shadows around you jealous. It started small. A missed invitation to a happy hour, an awkward silence when you walked into a room where laughter used to be. You told yourself you were imagining it, that maybe people were just stressed, deadlines, clients, pressure from the top. But deep down, in that quiet, untouched part of yourself that always knows the truth before you're ready to admit it, you felt it. Her name was Victoria. Perfect hair, perfect teeth, perfectly fake. She'd been there longer than you, but you never paid much attention to office politics. Never played the games. That was your mistake. Because Victoria, she played to win, and somewhere along the way, you became a threat. The numbers didn't lie. You outperformed every quarter. Landed clients the firm never dreamed of getting. You weren't loud about it, didn't brag, but you didn't have to. The reports spoke for you. And Victoria, well, she hated that. You noticed how her eyes narrowed every time your name came up in meetings, how she clutched her pen a little too tight when the CEO praised your work. But again, you brushed it off. Because you were raised to believe that if you worked hard and stayed in your lane, everything else would fall into place. Turns out, lanes don't mean a damn thing when people decide you don't belong on the track. Then, one Wednesday morning, gray skies, rain on the window, the kind of day that already felt heavy, you got an email, no subject line, no message, just an attachment, a scanned petition, 23 names, people you shared lunch with, covered for when they were late, celebrated birthdays with, signed a petition demanding your removal, claimed you were toxic to team morale, creating a hostile work environment, a threat to collaborative culture. Your hands went cold, stomach hollowed out like someone punched straight through it. You scrolled through the signatures. Maya, who cried in your office last month about her divorce. Daniel, who you recommended for a promotion. Even Chris, who swore you were his favorite. Coworker 23. And at the very top, Victoria. She didn't even try to hide it. Her name bold, clear, like a signature on a death warrant. For a moment, you couldn't move, couldn't breathe. The walls of your office felt too small, the air too thick. 1,000 questions clawed at your mind, but one thought screamed above them all. Why? And then, something shifted. The thing about being betrayed, it cracks something open inside you. At first, it's grief, then it's rage, and then, it's clarity. You realized in that moment that they didn't hate you because you were cruel, or dishonest, or impossible to work with. They hated you because you were undeniable, because you showed them what it looked like to rise without begging for permission, and maybe it was time to stop apologizing for that. The old you would have confronted them, demanded answers, tried to fix what was never yours to mend. But the version of you that sat there, staring at 23 signatures of cowardice, felt something else. Calm. You closed the email, sat back in your chair, listened to the rain tap against the glass, and then you smiled. Not because you weren't hurt. You were deeper than you wanted to admit, but because in that single gut-wrenching moment, you knew exactly what you were going to do. You didn't need their approval, didn't need their fake apologies. All you needed was your numbers, your results, the proof they couldn't erase. The CEO's quarterly review was in 2 weeks, and every one of your accounts was outperforming projections. Every one of your projects ahead of schedule. You had something Victoria and her little mob didn't. Undeniable, untouchable, inarguable results. They thought a petition could bury you. They forgot who you are, and you were about to remind them. Ask ChatGPT. You carried that secret with you for days, a storm building quietly beneath your skin. Every time you passed one of them in the hallway, every fake smile, every empty "Hey, how's it going?" You saw it differently now. You saw the calculation behind their eyes, the relief that you hadn't snapped, the arrogance of people who thought they'd gotten away with it. They didn't know you at all. The petition never made it to HR. That was their first mistake. Victoria thought she could keep it quiet, pressure you into leaving without having to make it official. No paper trail, no confrontation, just whispers in conference rooms and cold shoulders in the break room until you got the message. But you didn't run. You stayed. And every morning when you walked into that building, you made sure to meet their eyes, not with anger, not with tears, with silence. Steady, unreadable, unshakable, silence. The kind that makes guilty people nervous. You started coming in earlier, leaving later, not because you had to, but because it unnerved them. You felt it in the way conversations died when you entered a room, the way they kept glancing at each other, waiting for you to crack, but you didn't. Instead, you gathered your ammunition. See, you knew something they didn't. Numbers don't care about politics. Clients don't care about petty office vendettas. And in 2 weeks' time, those quarterly numbers were going to speak louder than any of their signatures ever could. You met with your accounts, double-checked every figure, followed up on every pending deal. You pulled late nights in that office. Lights dimmed, alone with the hum of the air conditioner and the soft click of your keyboard. And with every closed deal, every new contract signed, you felt it, the power shifting. There were moments, of course, when doubt crept in, when you sat at your desk with your head in your hands and wondered if it was worth it, if proving them wrong would fix what they broke inside you. Because the truth is, it wasn't just about work, it was about trust, about how easy it is for people you believed in to turn on you, how quickly your name can fill their mouths like poison. And the worst part wasn't their betrayal. It was how natural it seemed for them. You weren't a person to them anymore. You were a problem. And there's a different kind of loneliness in that. But every time the doubt threatened to pull you under, you reminded yourself, they don't get to decide your worth. You decided that. And then, the perfect opportunity presented itself. The CEO, Mr. Maddox, the one person in that building who cared more about results than rumors, sent out an internal memo, an upcoming leadership roundtable, invitation only, department heads and top performers. Victoria's name was on the list, so was yours. It was scheduled for the same week the quarterly numbers would drop. You could almost hear the universe whisper, checkmate. You knew Victoria would try to spin the petition before then, maybe leak it to HR, maybe stage a confrontation. But she didn't. She waited, probably hoping you'd flinch, jump ship, crumble under the weight of silent rejection. You made it a point not to give her the satisfaction. In fact, 3 days before the meeting, you passed her in the hallway. She stopped you, all tight smiles and faux sympathy. You know, if you're not happy here, it's okay to move on. No shame in that, she said, voice honeyed, eyes sharp. And you just smiled. A real one this time. Thanks, Victoria, but I'm exactly where I need to be. The flicker of uncertainty in her expression was worth every sleepless night. You could feel the tension mounting as the numbers release date approached. The usual office buzz dulled to a strained hush. People avoided your gaze now, not just out of guilt, but fear, because whether they admitted it or not, they knew what was coming. And then, the numbers dropped. You didn't have to say a word. The email landed in inboxes company-wide, bright and bold. Quarterly performance highlights. Your name at the top. Highest client retention, largest revenue growth, highest new contract acquisition, 3 firm-wide records, all attached to your name. 23 signatures couldn't erase that. The silence was deafening. You walked into the office the next morning like a storm wrapped in calm. Not angry, not smug, just certain. The same people who tried to erase you suddenly couldn't look you in the eye. Whispers chased you down hallways. Not cruel this time, not mocking, worried. Because the thing about people who play dirty is, they assume they're victims. Will too, and you hadn't even begun. The leadership roundtable was set for Friday, and you had a plan. Not petty, not loud, but surgical. Because revenge isn't about shouting from the rooftops. It's about precision. About reminding people, not with words, but with consequences, that you were never the one to bet against. And by the end of that meeting, every single one of them was going to remember exactly who you are. Friday came, heavy with anticipation. You could feel it in the way people spoke in hushed tones, the way glances lingered a little too long, the nervous laughter echoing down sterile hallways. The office felt like a pressure cooker, and you were the flame underneath it. The leadership roundtable was scheduled for noon. Conference room A, the glass-walled one where careers were made and destroyed with the flick of a spreadsheet. You arrived 5 minutes early, like you always did, not because you were eager, but because you wanted to see their faces when you walked in. Victoria was already there, seated at the far end of the table, posture perfect, lips curved into that too-sweet smile. She didn't expect you to show. You saw it in the slight widening of her eyes when you pushed open the door, in the way her hand hesitated over her notepad before she recovered, painting on a mask of nonchalance. Good. One by one, the others filed in. Department heads, senior managers, a few executives you barely spoke to but who knew your name now, thanks to those quarterly numbers. They greeted you with polite nods, measured tones. The same people who signed their names against you were now too afraid to meet your gaze. You didn't sit at the side of the table this time. You took the seat directly opposite the CEO. Mr. Maddox entered last, his presence sucking the air out of the room. He was a sharp, no-nonsense man, the kind who built empires with a handshake and crushed competitors with a glance. And when he spoke, the room listened. Let's get started. The meeting began as they always did. Numbers, projections, market shifts. You spoke when necessary, clear and concise. No bitterness, no sign of the storm swirling beneath your calm surface. But you knew your moment was coming. And then Maddox addressed the elephant in the room. I've been reviewing our team cohesion reports, he said, his gaze sweeping the table like a spotlight. There've been concerns, a beat of silence, shifting in seats, the air thickened. Victoria spoke first. Of course she did. Well, sir, she began, voice syrupy smooth. It's no secret we've had challenges with certain personalities. It's important we maintain a collaborative environment, and when someone disrupts that, I agree. Maddox cut in, his tone icy. She smiled, thinking she had him. and then he turned to you. But when that someone consistently outperforms, drives growth, and lands marquee clients while others are busy managing petty politics, I question whether the problem is the individual or the environment we've allowed to fester around them. The room went still. Victoria's face drained of color. You didn't flinch, didn't even blink. And then, in the quiet that followed, you spoke. "Thank you, sir. I actually prepared something for today." You slid a folder across the table. Inside, a detailed performance analysis, not just your numbers, but a side-by-side comparison of department contributions, client retention rates, revenue per employee, and lost opportunities due to internal delays directly tied to departments Victoria and her cronies managed. Facts undeniable, inarguable, ruthless. The executives leaned in, brows furrowed, pages turned. You watched Victoria's mask crack, her hand trembling as she gripped her pen. "I wanted to highlight areas where efficiency and cooperation have suffered," you continued, your voice calm, steady. "I believe if we focus less on undermining one another and more on actual performance, we'll see significant improvements." A subtle, surgical strike. No theatrics, no accusations. Just truth, and it cut deeper than any shouted confrontation ever could. Maddox closed the folder, a slow smile tugging at his lips. "Well said." He turned to the table. "Effective immediately, I'll be restructuring team leadership. Certain managers will be stepping down from collaborative oversight roles. We can't afford dead weight in leadership positions." Victoria's face went white. You didn't need him to say her name. Everyone in that room knew. And then the final blow. "I'll also be appointing a new director of client strategy," Maddox announced, "someone who's proven not only their ability to perform, but to lead through adversity." His gaze settled on you. "If you'll accept it." The room spun, or maybe it was just Victoria's world collapsing around her. You held his gaze. "I'd be honored, sir," and just like that, it was done. 23 signatures. Weeks of silent sabotage, and in one meeting, you'd dismantled them without raising your voice. When the meeting adjourned, people filed out quietly. Some offered stiff congratulations, others avoided you entirely. Victoria left last, eyes glassy, pride in pieces at her feet. You didn't gloat. You didn't need to. Revenge isn't about shouting your victories. It's about standing tall, while your enemies drown in the consequences of their own actions. That evening, alone in your office, you stood by the window and watched the city lights flicker on. It felt different now, like the weight that had clung to your shoulders was finally gone. You thought about what they'd done, how easy it was for people to turn. And yet, here you stood. Not in spite of them, because of them. They thought they could erase you with a petition. They forgot who you are, and now, they'd never forget again.